Hey, it's Justin Breen, author of Epic Life and co-founder of Brepic Network. Today on this amazing show, we're going to talk about why, as a visionary leader, you must create connection spiritually, how to create movement through meaning, and how to escape the industrial ghetto of your own mind in order to live a visionary, epic life. Can't wait to hear this interview.
Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Justin Breen. Justin was a journalist for 20 years. He went on to become the founder and CEO of a global PR firm, BR Epic. It's an exclusive connectivity platform, BR Epic Network. And his new book is Epic Life. And this book in and of itself has gone on to become a Wall Street Journal, a USA bestseller. You know, in part 1 of the show, we really examined this idea of, it was a really interesting start. And if you didn't get to listen to it, go back. Because here's a guy who, in many ways, thinking of the term of religion, and I often say, you've heard me say that this is my religion over here, curiosity. But we talked about, faith and what you bind yourself to, and about what the part of that is in your life and in your entrepreneurship and in your visionary way. We talked about that. We talked about the divine plus action. We talked about that. We talked about having patterns and recognizing the patterns of a visionary and how to know if you're a visionary. And it doesn't mean you're better or worse, but being a visionary is definitely a distinction. And Justin beautifully outlined the definition of that in a way that allows us to grasp. There's a real lot in part 1, and I encourage you to go back if you just happen to stumble into part 2. We're going to continue on that conversation because one of the things that Justin and I were talking about in the break was the fact that we, as visionaries, I am a 9 quick start in Colby. Justin is a 10.
I'm not a 10. The 10 is 1 out of 200 humans. In my world, it's 1 out of 9. I'm a 7.
So you're a 7. I'm sorry. Okay. So we're this high visionary individuals.
Yeah.
But there's difficulty in operating in the world sometimes with that mentality, because a lot of time you're talking in ways that are so beyond what most people can grasp. And it's not disrespectful to anybody else.
Oh.
It's just understanding how you operate yourself. And it's that feeling that can often come for us around the frustration. So
yeah,
one of the things that Justin was talking about, as I said, we were talking about in the break, is that we put together patterns that other people can't see.
Yeah.
Like in the emotional source code work that I do with companies and organizations and even nations and individuals, I'm putting together a pattern, a way to put the jigsaw puzzle together that people would not normally see. And Justin and I were talking about how he does that, and it's actually his way of thinking. And so we talked about the fact that, as you may have noticed if you're watching this as a video, that Justin is often not looking at the camera.
Never.
And remember, he's a guy who was a journalist and appeared on camera, and he was telling me how a challenge that was, because he's looking at his own ideas that are visually in space in his mind. And it's interesting because we're using this term visionary, and there's an envisioning of these patterns in space.
Yes.
So talk to us about, just give us a little minute on that, because I want people to grasp what that's like, because people might feel like you're kind of all over the shop and you're not really present for them.
No. So a human will think that, but a visionary will be like, oh, where's this person been? But you were interviewed, let's see, 2008, I believe. And then you said the only way to have reality you want is by mastering your mind. And that's not going to happen overnight, but you can get better management of your mind over time. So what I've learned is my mind works most effectively when it's staring around, because then I can put the patterns together. And me looking at cameras, it's a waste of time. So if someone's annoyed that I'm not looking at the camera, then they don't understand how a visionary works. I would never tell a visionary how to operate, because that would be disrupting their vision. And then you keep using the word delicious, which I appreciate. And then I looked it up because I like to, I like to know what words mean. And so delicious means highly pleasant to the taste. So this conversation, I think it's highly pleasant to the mind. It would not be highly pleasant if I was staring at a camera, regurgitating something that didn't correspond with my vision. But I can do it because I can see things in space of how to answer the question, because my brain is putting together those dots in real time while I'm looking around and not at you.
You said something earlier about how people who are visionaries would not ask you to do that. And so it's an interesting thing here. And it really falls in line with what we were talking about creating cultures of belonging.
Yes.
Versus a culture of fitting in. A culture of fitting in, we are telling people this is the system, and you need to follow the system.
Right.
The culture of belonging, it's what is your system?
Yes.
And how can you best use your system to reach or to help us fulfill our purpose, our vision, our meaning.
Right.
So you bring up an important point here, which is don't interrupt a genius by telling them how to do it.
Bad idea. Yeah, bad idea. Well, the other,
you're going to get the results you want.
So where you see that in human world, and I've thought about this a lot because again I like words, right? So ADD or ADHD, the last word is disorder. So that's labeled that because it's a human who doesn't understand a visionary who's all over the place, and then they medicate them to create order. That's what, or a kid who's a genius in school and they're all over the place. I'll put them in a classroom with kids that are, not up to par academically, or give them a hall pass, get them out of the room because that's disorder. My whole world is connecting disorder to disorder because those are the people that create the things that create order for everyone else. I mean, if you look around at people ask me, they're like, oh, what do you like about entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs? I go, well, look around. Everything that's created, nature not included, although entrepreneurs are helping with nature, but anything that was created by an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur who hired someone to create it for them. Anything. It doesn't, anything. So and again, entrepreneurs, I hate using the word should, but they should be rewarded the most because they've done the most creating. And then, as you said brilliantly multiple times, they can't get out of their own way many times because they're so damaged and they torch their own life to create things that help others. Meanwhile, they should be helping themselves first, and then they can really, really help others. So that's the
call of the book, right? Is like
100%
to go to. We don't want to get in the way of you. When I do my work with people, they'll often say, "Well, is this going to interfere with my success?" And my answer is, absolutely not. It's going to magnify it,
augment it. 100%.
Right? It's bringing home the disenfranchised past that was shamed by society or your own family or your culture.
Yes.
Bringing home those disenfranchised past to make you more successful, but with deeper meaning, and that's the key. So let me ask you this. Again, using the framework of the book and all this different understanding of visionary.
Yes.
When you look out at the world, I know that you and I had a conversation about this. It was quite fascinating.
Yeah.
When you look out at the world, and many people see the world as being in a dark place. I had a conversation with a friend of mine last week, and we talked about this dark place where a lot of people are seeing.
No.
And what does it mean? So in the context of global leadership, in the context of what we're seeing in the world today, what do you believe is needed? Besides visionaries, but what do we do?
Oh, well, I ignore, so people that look at things in a dark or complaining way, I just ignore them. So all I do is I connect people like us to people like us because they help everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're either born like that or you're not. If you are born like that, you can work on your mindset every day. What I've learned in that is having the right mindset, which again is visionary abundance investment. That's the equivalent of marrying a stabilizing human. Usually people like us, not always, but we marry stabilizing humans. So having that stabilizing mindset is an equivalent to marrying a stabilizing human. So certainly any leader who's like this, they can work on their mindset, that abundant visionary investment mindset. So, because if a leader looks at things as it being dark, then everyone associated with them, they're going to feed off that. That's why I only talk to people that don't think like that, because they're the ones that help everyone else. They're the ones that create abundance. They create investment. They create vision. And then if I connect them to other people like that, there's no limits to what that can create. So no, I don't care about anything negative.
The key here and what I'm hearing from you is, rather than seeing the world as, quote, dark, or for that matter, light, looking at the world from a place of, what is a problem I can solve?
100%.
And what is my vision of how to do that? And who do I need to assist me in doing
100%.
that?
100%. Well, so one, that's a great simplifier. So again, my brain turns everything into patterns. So one, right mindset attracts right network, creates right opportunities. So what you just said, having that right mindset attracts the right networks, network creates right opportunities for you. Wrong mindset, world is dark, attracts wrong network, it creates wrong opportunities. It's as simple as that. But again, you're either born like this or you're not. You're born with the ability to create this type of mindset, have the IQ and or EQ to create a massive company like that. So you're either born like that or you're not. And if you are, then you work on that mindset to attract the right network, the right who's to do the things for you, and you can help them.
So how do we, as I said, I think that even as I said at the intro of the part one, that entrepreneurs, it's my belief. It's not the truth, it's my belief. Entrepreneurs, even the shitty ones, I think want to make a difference. I think that initially, and by the way, I also believe that about the majority of politicians. I think that initially they start out wanting to make a positive difference. Things that happen along the way and they get pulled in different directions and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But when you look at how do you build a collaborative company while putting your loved ones first, and I get that you definitely believe that should be the case, but how do we do that when it feels like this thing, i.e. Tesla, SpaceX, whatever it might be, takes everything I've got, and I've got to solve this huge problem in the world, and you, honey, need to understand that about me. And so the loved ones are always in the shadows. How do we build these collaborative companies while putting loved ones first?
Great question.
It's a gigantic problem.
Massive problem. So there are two things from that. Two things. One, people like us usually marry stabilizing humans. Again, and then where I see it successful is that the stabilizing human is the most supportive. If the stabilizing human is the one that holds the visionary back the most, it's not going to work. So where I see it being successful is someone like me married to a stabilizing human who's also very smart. And then she's like, hey, I'm tired of talking to humans. I want to now be a COO of one of your companies and phase out of pediatrics. So that's what I see more often than not in that regard. If someone like us marries a non-stabilizing human, one of two things happens. One, greatest life imaginable, traveling the world great. More often than not, it's a total disaster because there's no stability. But really, it's up to the visionary to admit that they're the biggest problem as well. That's the other thing. Like the visionary creates the solution to the problem, but in this case, the visionary many times is the problem. They just might not know it. And then they have to go through 2 or 3 divorces or never seeing family to realize that they're the problem. So hopefully you don't have to get to that point. But again, asking yourself that question, what game are you winning and who's the problem here? That's the first way of really tackling this.
Many years ago, I'm talking about 25 years ago, I had a client who I was working with, and I said, I really need to have a conversation with you and your husband together because I'm getting a one-sided story here. And she said, oh, he won't come in. And I said, why not? And she said, well, he's a dentist. I was like, I don't think we're doing a root canal, so why not? And she said, well, he's a dentist. And I said, I don't understand. She goes, well, he's very intelligent.
Okay.
And I said, what's that got to do with anything? And she goes, well, he thinks this is for people who are not as bright as.
Oh,
And it's that blind arrogance of I'm so good at something, therefore I think I'm good at everything. And I think that visionary entrepreneur that you're talking about says, listen, do you have 2 Rolls Royces, Dov? Do you have a yacht? Do you have a house on an island? Blah, blah, blah. All these material things that check boxes. And can't face that they have a problem that is causing...
shield. All that is shield.
It's a shield. And I often say that the successes are a distraction from their internal pain.
100%. Most damage with best coping.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. So how does the book address that? Because I find that is almost prescriptive. It's almost like
100%.
It's like, oh, your excuse is going to be that you are already really successful, so you're not the problem.
Yeah,
how
but
do you address
my point is a visionary who understands that will realize that they're the problem. That's my point. But they've been surrounded by people that never brought that up. They're talking to people that talk about the cars or island house or whatever that is. And it's like the reason why that person said that about their dentist husband for multiple reasons. One, dentists you can look this up. They're almost always low quick start, high follow through. They're the most afraid of losing anything. They're the biggest cost scarcity vertical. My wife's a pediatrician, so she's involved in healthcare. The dentists are the highest suicide rate for healthcare professionals. And in Colby world, they're like 8822s. So that's playing not to lose. Somebody's going to screw you over. Low quick starts are afraid to take tests or come in and talk about it. I mean, that's a visionary's not like that. They're the opposite. So I just ignore the dentists. I just focus on the visionaries who are actually going to do something, because the dentist isn't going to.
But we're not specifically talking about dentists. We're talking about
humans. The humans are the
humans who have this idea. Because my key here is that understanding that many of those people are entrepreneurs who have been incredibly successful. Right. But there is this ego arrogance around admitting I am the problem.
Right.
Right? Because I can't be the problem because my ego is so big and I've made so much success. How could I possibly be the problem? So the problem is that the reason I'm getting divorced again is because I keep finding assholes, or better still, assholes keep finding me, or biatches keep finding me, or money grubbers keep finding me.
Right.
As opposed to, you're the common denominator.
It's been the person the whole time.
Hey, you are the common denominator of every relationship.
It's really not that hard. It's really so. So if it's helpful, because that, journalists for 20 years, you don't get into that for like employee count or revenue. Like that stuff's always been confusing to me. So if someone's like someone that you're talking about and they lead with 3 or more things, if like I first met them and they lead with 3 things that are material. So like, hey, I had an exit, going on this vacation. I don't know. I got a new car, whatever that is. Okay. So if it's 3 or more, then I'll be like, usually before they say a 4th thing, although many times not because they're ADD, but they're all over the place. But if I can get a word in, I'll go, oh, thank you for telling me that. How is your family? And almost always they're like, oh, I'm going through a divorce. And because it retrains because no one ever asks them that. Just like, oh, great, you got another car or whatever. So because I genuinely don't care about revenue and all that stuff, I really care about how a person acts and what they're going to do, then I'll just cut through all the nonsense. I was talking to a guy in UK, and he kept identifying himself as, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to say it, but he's like, oh yeah, I'm the one who had UK's first $1 billion not social media, but like SaaS platform company. So he would go around, he exited that company like 15 years ago, but he kept going around the room that he was introducing himself. I'm like, that was 15 years ago. And so I started talking to him about it at his family, and he's like, oh yeah, thank God I married a stabilizing human who keeps me on track. But he was still in that identity of 15 years ago. and he was looking for that next moment. So 15 years he's been miserable because he doesn't have that next eureka moment.
And that is so common.
Right.
I've used this analogy many times. You go, when people say to me, "Oh, we have been friends with Bob for 25 years," I'm like, "Oh, okay." And they go, "What?" And I said, "Well, what do you guys talk about?" You talk about how you got drunk at college. I mean, or Bob's still wearing his football ring, that he got in high school or he got in the first year of university. I'm like, what are you working towards? My very good friend, Mark Levy, says, when you look at your life and you have conversations about it, it may be very inspiring to other people. But if it doesn't inspire you, you're not inspiring.
100%. If you're not a litmus test for people you serve, that's hypocrisy. So most people think that's selfish. It's illogical not to be selfish. So like purpose of my life is to be connecting superhero for every visionary, not human, not business owner, visionary who shares their stories with the world. So I am a visionary sharing my story with the world. That's just being a litmus test for people you serve. And then I keep making bigger investments to be in smaller rooms. The people in those rooms are making bigger impact. And that allows me to spend biggest investment in smallest room, which is my family, where I can make the most impact. But how can you expect people to make bigger investments in you and your companies if you aren't making bigger investments in yourself? That's completely illogical. That doesn't even make any sense to me. So like, if you can't be a litmus test for people you're serving and be the ultimate case for people you're serving, how can you expect to serve people? At least the ones who aren't like you. I mean, that makes zero sense to me.
You get no argument from me.
There's no argument. I mean, I get
argument
can be, but I.
However, most people are not doing that. But
right.
I'm so
logical.
I'm so with you. I'm so
right.
So, we talked about that you were a journalist for 20 years. You brought that up.
Yeah.
And then you've moved into this completely different, or seemingly completely different.
Same thing. It's the same thing.
Well, it appears different.
Yes, it's the same purpose with a different way of doing it. Yeah.
Right. What drove you? I mean, aside from the economics, right? Because journalism. I actually have a great love and a respect for journalists. I just wish there was some left, apart from John Bilgner.
Come into my world. I ignore mainstream media completely.
John Bilgner and some others who I have the utmost respect for. As one of the greatest journalists of all time.
Yeah.
But most of them have had to sell their souls to stay in anything resembling the industry. Was that what got you out? And how did that get you into the PR world, which
tremendous
again seems to be different?
Yeah. Okay. Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, again, formula for creating successful global company is simple: as you see a problem, create solution, problem solve, successful global company. And then people like us are usually, but not always, aliens within our own family, community, and verticals. There's no belonging because we're alien. I mean, so you got to find people to, okay. So for 20 years, I was an entrepreneur who happened to be a journalist. I never understood negative news or political stuff. I've ignored politics my entire life because it's the opposite of visionary abundance investment mindset. But okay, so journalists who are journalists, the bleeds it leads things, they had no idea what I was doing and I didn't know what they were complaining about. So that was my pre-entrepreneur life. Okay. And so then created first company based on how PR firms annoyed me for 20 years when I was a journalist. So I actually have no idea what PR firms do. They just annoyed me. So created a solution, solved it, successful global company. We only partner with visionaries. So not business owners. So I never watch the news. I ignore mainstream media because that's for humans. That's for journalists who are journalists, not entrepreneurs who happen to be journalists. And I found these shows, again, litmus tests for people you serve, but these shows are transformational platforms for entrepreneurs. And there's three reasons. You'll appreciate this because you're the answer to all three of them, but I know you are. So there are three reasons. One, The host is an entrepreneur, not a journalist. So they're coming from a place of abundance, not scarcity. A journalist who's writing about crime or politics will never be able to ask questions the way you ask. And if they did, they would not understand the answer or fake like they understood. Okay. They'd be the clever ones, but they're not really vision.
Right.
Okay. Right. Okay. 2, you can do a deep dive on someone, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour plus. So it's not a drive-by interview like you'd see on TV, radio.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really get to learn. I mean, it's a drive-by. That's what it. Okay. So then 3, what I've seen is most important, that the audience might not be as large quantity-wise. I don't care how many people are listening at all. Really doesn't matter to me, but it's a far more qualified audience. So I'm guessing a regular human is not listening to this at this point. If they are, I'd be very curious. But so all these shows are transformational platforms for entrepreneurs. That's what they are.
So what is that was your first company?
Yeah.
So what is second company?
Second company is LinkedIn for its high price point on invite-only connectivity platform for visionaries. So PR firm, journalist for 20 years, created an entire business based on how PR firms annoyed me. So that's connections for media interviews like this. Second company's connections for anything. Doesn't matter. And so I'm in these top entrepreneur groups, and I see the same problem in these breakouts. 1, someone needs to find the right person. They need to find the right person, no matter what it is. And then 2, they want to meet more people like us because they want to belong. And they do not want to talk to business owners. They only want to talk to visionaries. So it's been beautiful to watch that. And then my wife is the missing link because she's the perfect COO integrator with Harmony. And then my partner, who's in California, I'm in Chicago. He does 8 and 9-figure deals all day. That's not my world, but he's a bigger visionary than I am. So he's like a gatekeeper for family office type things, which is great. Perfect collab. Yeah, it's delicious. It's highly pleasant to the taste. That's what it is.
So, when I think about PR, PR is, even if you get PR training, there's always, what's your story?
Yeah.
People want to know, what's your story? What's the story? And I think that oftentimes that's misunderstood.
Completely misunderstood.
Point of view, having been a journalist and having a PR firm.
Yeah.
For those people who are listening who are visionaries, who are or suspect they may be visionaries.
Yes.
And maybe the suspicion is you feel like a freaking alien.
That's what you are.
Around people.
If you're talking to people and they're staring at you for most of your life, then you're probably a visionary.
Yeah, I personally know nothing about that. I've never experienced that, but I've read about it.
There are 4 types of visionaries, only 4. Again, everything is a pattern. 1 is ADD, diagnosed, undiagnosed. 2, minor Asperger's, which my wife, who's a doctor, has unofficially diagnosed me with that. 3 is dyslexia. 30% of visionaries are dyslexic. You can't read or write, so you learn a different way. And then 4th is exceptionally high IQ and or EQ. So I'm guessing you're ADD and very high IQ, EQ. Again, it's not a compliment or anything. It's just like you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing without that type of pattern recognition. It would be impossible.
Yep, I definitely can see where that's coming from.
Yeah, right.
So based on what we were just talking about, what makes for a great story?
So there are only 2 things. Okay. And then the dovetail to that is any visionary would never try to do this themselves. Like if you get me out of my zone of genius, I either don't do it or find someone who's better at it than me. That's why I see my family whenever I want to and do what I like to do. It's like,
right.
Don't leave that zone of genius. So anyone that would try to do this themselves they're not a visionary. They're a business owner being clever and trying to fake it. Okay. So for a story, only needs 2 things. 1 is a good story, which everyone has. What you've overcome in life, what inspires you, why you're doing this. That's easy. Most people don't know how to do it because they haven't done this their whole lives. They don't.
Right.
So that's 1. And then 2 is a news peg. A news peg is, why is it a story now? So a book, second company, you're speaking somewhere. expanded. But nobody really cares about what you do. But if they care about who you are, they will care about what you do.
So, but the truth of the matter is, certainly in today's mainstream media, which is a lot of it is based on followers, number of followers and likes and all the other nonsense to do with social media. Yeah. If you're getting on to traditional media, or you're trying to get that hook onto to be on Joe Rogan, let's use that, which is better sense of media that I would have.
Yes.
It's that person doesn't know me. He's never heard of Dove Baron. Maybe he's never heard of Justin. Maybe he's never heard of somebody who's listening.
Yes.
And so that who I am doesn't get through. And oftentimes it is what I've done that grabs the attention of the producer or of the host themselves.
Yep. So that's fair. And I will counter that with this. So Earl Nightingale, he's the OG. He's the OG of motivational speakers. And my favorite quote of his, he was doing recordings before, early.
I had these LPs.
Yeah, right.
I had these LPs.
Right, of course. Okay. So success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Success is progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So my worthy ideal is to be connecting superhero for every visionary who shares stories with the world. So by doing that and never stop doing that, then being on shows like Joe Rogan and other things like that, or shows like this, that's just a natural byproduct of being in progressive realization of worthy ideal. So the worthy ideal to me is who you are, and that will attract the what you do and then the people who will care about them. That's the way I look at the world.
So in your company, VR Epic, is the focus on, from a PR point of view, is the focus on, so let's say we've got a leader who's listening to us who is a visionary leader, and they say, well, I'd like to get on Rogan or whatever it might be. Is the focus on helping them get to those places?
Yes. The focus is on introducing them to people like you who interviewed them, and then people like us listen to them and want to interview them. Okay. So what I've learned, so again, if you're not a litmus test for people you serve, that's hypocrisy. So what I've learned by doing this is, and I never expected this, but this is how you learn, is that I've become my own key that opens up endless doors. Because of books and multiple companies, what has happened is hosts want to interview me first, which is great, and then many times they want to interview PR partners. That is right. It's created that trusted relationship. And then I'm constantly introducing people like us to people like us. So it eliminates, what do you want to call it, marketing, outbound. It eliminates that, because if you create value for visionaries don't live in competition. They live in collaboration. They want to create value for you. And then the second company is just a room of visionaries who are like, oh, I can introduce you to this and this. And I'm like, great, have fun. What do you want with it? Because I just want to create the room where it actually happens, and then whatever happens from that is fine with me.
My theme around that is very simple. The people like us,
yes,
do not believe in competition.
There is no.
Only believe in collaboration.
100%.
I can't compete with you because I'm not you. And so many of my co-collaborators would officially be my competition, officially in another world of looking at it. From my point of view, it's like, well, we both serve this audience. How can we come together and serve at a greater level?
Why wouldn't you do that? So one, that makes perfect sense. Two, you're either born with the capability to understand that and evolve from that, or you're not. I'm firmly convinced of that. I think most people would want to feel that way, but they're not. They're not equipped. And then what I hear a lot is like, oh, this is from a human or business owner. Like, oh, you're in PR space. Isn't that competitive? I go, no. It's not competitive at all. Nothing outbound. There's been nothing outbound. And then I always know when something is going to, like, I very rarely have a great idea, maybe one a year, two at the most. But if it's a great idea, then I'll just, for fun or, as a test, I will talk to someone who's not like us, and I'll ask them what they think about it. And then if the human or non-visionary just laughs and says that will never work, then I know it'll work. I'm like, oh, that's a bad idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now be investing all my money.
I go, thank you very much. So when I started first company, I literally told, like, company's entire process is on the website. It's literally right there. Literally anyone could. I go, this is what my firm does. We do one thing for visionaries. That's it. And they all laughed. They're like, this is never going to work. I go, okay. And then the second company, it's high price point, invite only connectivity platform, because visionaries don't want to hang out with business owners. They don't want that. So these business owners are like, oh, that's not going to work. People don't want the right connection. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, and then that'll scale itself, because the members will just introduce their friends to it, which I'm very excited about.
But you said something there that I want people to grab
Okay, go.
awareness of, and that is that you may see these high ticket, small room,
Yes.
connection things as like, some greedy bastard
No,
getting together with other greasy. No, I'm not saying you, but people will see this.
that's humans. They don't
Greedy
get.
bastards hanging out with other greedy bastards. And here's the thing. You think it's about exclusivity. I get that.
Yes.
But they see it as being in the room with people who will get them. And I can clearly remember being a very, very poor kid living in a ghetto area.
Yep.
And working for this guy who owned a
Industrial ghetto, Northern England.
yeah, exactly, and he owned this store that wholesaled dishes, and I was working for him. And while I was packing all these boxes and doing the things for him, he said, "Here's the keys to my car. Go clean my car."
Yeah.
And because of my conditioning, I looked at him and went, "What? Like, you lazy bastard," was what I was thinking. Why don't you clean your own car?
Yes. Yep.
Right? That was my mindset at that time.
Right.
It wasn't until later I realized, why the hell would he clean his car? I get it. Like, he's got better things to do with his time.
Correct.
That it's more valuable in the world, not just in money, but in the world,
Right.
than cleaning his bloody car. And it took me a long time to shift out of that lack mentality that I'd been marinating in, to go push that away and say, well, what's pure and true for me? Oh, it's actually all abundance. Oh, okay. And so I think a lot of the time you've got to overcome what you've been marinating in.
Right. You were the problem.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're right at the very end here, Justin, and I am going to ask you to tell people where they can find out more about you. But before I do that, I want you. Is there a one single sentence step you would love for people to go away and put in action, preferably in the next 5 minutes, but certainly within the next 24 hours?
5 seconds. Yeah. As a journalist, you're not focused on 5 years. You're focused on 5 minutes. Chapter 1 of Epic Life is the cream rises to the top. That's something my dad said every day. He died when I was 13. He'd be 107 now. So came from nothing, shot down multiple times in combat, became attorney in Nazi war crimes, Nuremberg trials. And then he would just say the cream rises to the top. So at the highest level, there are no excuses, only action and investment. And so any visionary will never make an excuse. They'll just take action and make investment.
Beautiful. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for this delicious conversation. Please tell everybody where they can find out more about you and your book.
Well, you're a great visionary. Without a doubt, one of the best interviews I've ever been on, and there have been many, and I can't wait to listen to this again to see how your brain works. That wasn't a joke, but thanks for laughing at that. But
No, I know that some people are like, oh my God, that's a horror show.
Well, right. That's most visionaries, because they're aliens within their own family, community, and verticals. But, Epic Life is book, and I guess the main site is brepicllc.com. And yeah, I'm everywhere. So
like I said, we'll make sure that all that is posted in the show notes. It's been a joy and a pleasure, sir. Thank you for being with us. I hope you stay with us to the end. And for you, the listener, remember, those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. Business and political leaders committed to making positive shift in the landscapes of those environments. They know that you've got to tap into what drives human behavior, and you can tap into the groundbreaking understanding of applying the anatomy of meaning extracted from the emotional source code. I'm Dov Barron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends, stay curious about whether the visionary within you, whether you've allowed the visionary within you to be repressed under the social pressure you operate in. Because if you have, here's one thing you'll know for sure. As Justin pointed out numerous times throughout the interview, if you've allowed that, you're walking around feeling like an alien in your own world.
Yes.
And if you've got that feeling, maybe there's a deep visionary within you asking you to step up and be epic. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you, tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.